Hey, it's Brock here with Rock Hill Farms, and today we're going to have a little fun with the chainsaws. I'm going to put a 36-inch bar on the 500i and see how well it handles it. So I was thinking the other day, it's really time to get a longer bar, because I do stump grinding is one reason, and I go in and cut these stumps off, and all the way down at ground level, when I go to cut them down, even like a 30-inch tree is 48 down at ground level, and it's just hard to cut those when you're working at ground level and you have a bar that only reaches halfway, because both of these saws I run a 25-inch chain on. So I was thinking I'm going to get a longer bar, but I want to go online and see what people think is the longest bar that a 500i will run well. I know it'll run it, but will it run it well? And so I did a Google search for 500i 36-inch bar. And I got some people in forums saying, yeah, you can run it, but I wouldn't recommend it and stuff. Then I saw that you can buy the 500i with a 36-inch bar. So if they sell it that way, it shouldn't be a problem. But I'm going to find out. And I'm not just going to put the 36-inch bar on and start cutting. First, I want to establish how fast it cuts with the 25-inch bar. So we're going to get a piece of material that's 20, 22, 24, somewhere in that range. And we're going to cut it with a brand new chain on the 25-inch bar on the 500i. Just for good measure, I'm also going to put a new chain on the 391 and cut that same piece of wood. Then I'm going to put the 36-inch bar on the 500i and cut it with that. And we'll do time comparisons and see if it cuts just as fast with the longer bar when it's on a smaller piece of wood. Then we're going to get something that is 32, 34 inches, whatever I've got laying around here, and see how well it cuts going through a big piece of material like that. So, should give me a pretty good idea of how well this saw handles that bar. Cutting stumps isn't my only reason for wanting the bigger saw. I've also got a habit lately of cutting down trees that are in that 25 to 30 inch range. And you can cut them down with a shorter chain. I mean, obviously you can at least go to double the bar length, but it's a lot easier if you can make a continuous cut, especially like on this big tree over here. I was wanting to do a bore cut, and that was harder because my bar wouldn't go all the way through. I've also saved a saw log down there that is about 32-inch diameter, I believe, and about 8 foot long, and I want to cut that up into lumber, and I didn't have any equipment to do it with, so I also got this new Granberg mill that will accept up to a 36-inch bar. So now I can cut some wide planks of lumber or whatever I'm able to get out of that, but it's good solid oak, so I look forward to it. And this thing's dirty. I should need to clean this more often. Also, while I was cleaning this up, I was going to tell you guys that I'm pretty excited about next week. And if you're watching this later, we're talking about the end of September 2021. And I'm going to a utility equipment expo in Louisville, Kentucky. Now, I've always enjoyed going to these shows and just seeing different types of equipment, but this is one of the biggest ones in the country, and I chose it even though it was so far away because there's also a big YouTube meetup for a lot of my favorite channels. One that most of you guys have probably watched is Tractor Time with Tim. He's going to be at this meetup. Dirt Perfect is another one I love to watch. Let's Dig 18, Neil Cope, Dig Drive DIY. My memory fails me every time I get on camera, so I can't remember half of them. I think Man Behind the Scenes, Captain Kleeman, who is on Dirt Perfect's channel a lot. He's not going to be there because I think he had to work. But there's 20 channels that are sponsored there. I think Hamiltonville Farms is going to be there. So a lot of channels I enjoy watching. I think Tony from Tony's Tractor Adventure. And so I'm really excited to go up there and meet some of these guys. My chain was in a knot, so I had to stop talking long enough to look at it and straighten it out. But I was saying Hamiltonville Farm's going to be there. Tony from Tony's Tractor Adventure is not on the list, and I'm not on the list either. But Tony's going to be there. So I'm excited to meet up all these channels. But also, on the way there, I'm going to pass by Joe Capitano's place. And that is from the YouTube channel Capper Outdoors. And I've been watching a lot of his content lately. Right before I came out to record this, I was watching him. He had his truck and trailer stuck in a ditch, and he pulled them out with an excavator, which was pretty cool. So I'm going to stop at his place, and he's going to let me test drive some of his equipment, because he's kind of where I'm trying to go as far as getting set up with equipment to do all these different types of jobs. So should be a really fun trip. I'm going to get several videos out of it. I should get to test drive a whole bunch of equipment and maybe talk to some people that I've been watching for a long time. So anyway, that's enough talking. I'm going to get all these chains on, and then let's cut some wood. Okay, so I've got a piece of oak that I cut down last fall. So should be a good for test cuts. Let's check the diameter on this. We are 20 that way. Yeah, about 19.5. So pretty good size for the 25-inch bar. The routine I use when doing these cut time tests is I'll start the saw, let it run for about 3 minutes, rev it a couple times, and then start the timer and lay into the wood, see how long it takes. And I'll do 2 cuts per. Sometimes I might think about doing 3, except I've only got a foot of this to cut off, and I don't want to try to cut 1/2-inch slivers. So I'll go ahead and get the 391 started, and we'll run it first. Two cuts with the 391 took 1:15. That felt really slow. So I honestly think I need to look into my 391 and see what's wrong with it, because it took 1 minute and 45 seconds, I think, to cut 2 slabs of that, and it shouldn't. But we got 35 seconds for 2 cuts on the 500. So we'll get the bar switched out and we'll try it with the bigger bar on this same piece of wood. Then we'll get a bigger piece and see how it handles the bigger bar. Alright, so when I edit this, I'll verify the times, because I had a stopwatch set up where I could see it, and I used the stopwatch that was running to know when to start the cut. But then when I finished the cut, I'm holding the saw up in the air and the timer's still running, but I can't see it because it's got sawdust on the screen. So it wasn't a perfect way to time it. It looked to me like it took the same amount of time to cut with the longer bar as it did the shorter bar. Which, if that's the case, I'm going to verify that whenever I edit this film, and I'll put that in if it wasn't the same. But if it was the same, then running the longer bar did not bog it down or slow it down. So let's get a bigger piece of wood and see how it handles it. One thing, if you've never ran a longer bar, I'd never ran anything longer than my 25. Putting that 36 on there, I was really surprised by how front heavy it was. I should have got a light bar. I didn't specify what kind of bar, but I can really feel how end heavy it is. And when I went that second cut and I was trying to go fast without rushing, it got crooked. So just something I didn't anticipate. So I'll go find a bigger log. Okay, so I've done a few of these time tests on cutting, and I always just start at the top, cut down, let the round fall. And I've watched other people do these, and that's how they usually do it. And I've got this huge log that is right down by the ground, and I got 90% of the way cut through, and the log was angled, and the way I cut the slab, that bottom piece is like 5 inches thick. I started off cutting 1 inch thick, but cutting that angled piece, it just gets wider as it goes down. I got about 80% of the way through. I said, there's a good chance that when I cut the last of this, it's gonna flop into my bar and throw my chain off. And thought, I'm sitting there cutting, and I'm thinking the right way to cut this would have been to cut partially from the bottom and then finish it from the top. But it was kind of too late for that. I decided to bring it up and change the angle I was cutting at. It threw the chain off. So I've only ever thrown a chain off one time, which I guess means I don't cut enough wood, but it popped off that one real easy being such a long bar. But I don't think I want to finish that last little bit of the cut the way I have it setting. I'm going to roll it out of the grapple and then cut that last bit from the top. Then I'll give you my thoughts on running this bar and chain on this saw. With video editing, I didn't have to show that I messed up and threw that chain off, but I like to keep it real and show I'm just an ordinary guy trying to learn how to do some stuff. What are my thoughts on that? First, on being someone who doesn't have a ton of experience with these larger saws. For years, I used an electric chainsaw, a small one, just limbing branches and little stuff like that, or something falls over. Then I got the 250 and I used it for about a year. And I started cutting stuff that was too big for the 18-inch bar on that 250. I thought, well, I need a bigger saw. And I kept moving up, and the 25-inch bar on the 500i still seemed pretty manageable. But that 36, the weight is so far away from you and it's such a long bar, there's more ways to go wrong, basically. I think it's probably a lot easier to throw the chain off. It's a lot easier to hurt yourself. So just be cautious jumping in from a homeowner-sized saw into a mid-sized saw into running a big bar like that one. But as far as the actual combination of that bar and chain, I think it's kind of iffy. I think if you tried to run that bar setup on that saw and run it the way I run my other saws, like with the 25-inch bar on the 500, I mean, I can put down pressure on it and just cut right through. With this, not a good idea. I think you could actually burn your saw up if you did that. And the other thing that a lot of people, I read quite a few discussions on forums about running a larger bar on this saw. You have to be careful to make sure it's getting enough oil. I think already in the one cut, it was getting a little hotter than maybe it should. So, would I recommend that combo? Probably not, unless you really know what you're doing. If you know what you're doing, I guess what are you watching me for? But I've got that 32-inch mill, and I may or may not be able to mill with that saw. I'm going to give it another try and get that chainsaw mill in a future video and see if I can mill that log up. And if it's just too much for it, I'll pass it off. I'm not going to try to force it. And I may end up getting a larger chainsaw to run that bar. A 660 would be ideal for milling 32-inch lumber. I appreciate you taking time to watch this video. Just a minute, you'll see links on the screen to a couple more of our videos, and I'll see you next time.